Can you even afford this place?" My sister sneered across the marble lobby, like she was talking to a stray dog that wandered in from the street. And before I could even answer, a deep voice cut in behind her, confident and warm, saying, "Welcome back." In that moment, my world flipped upside down. I felt every pair of eyes in that luxury hotel turning toward me, judging me, waiting for me to crumble. Tell me honestly, would you have walked away? Or would you have stood your ground the way I did? Because what happened next is the reason my family still barely talks to me to this day. I guess I should start from the beginning, because none of this would have happened if my sister hadn't always believed she was better than me. I grew up being compared to her. She was the golden child, the one with the scholarships, the perfect smile, the friends who always looked like they stepped straight out of an advertisement. And then there was me, the artsy dreamer, the one who didn't follow the straight path, the one who switched majors twice and worked weird jobs just to stay afloat. Every holiday, my parents would ask my sister about her career, her promotions, her future. And then they'd turn to me and say things like, "So, are you still doing that thing?" Whatever I was doing became that thing. Nothing was taken seriously. Nothing was ever good enough. But here's the irony. While my sister climbed the traditional corporate ladder, I quietly built a small business. It didn't look impressive at first. I freelanced. I worked late nights. I cried more than I'll ever admit. But slowly, things changed. Clients recommended me. Then bigger clients came. Then I hired help. But I never bragged about it, because bragging wasn't safe in my family. Bragging invited criticism, lectures, comparisons, so I kept my success quiet. Maybe too quiet. Fast forward to last year. My sister decided to plan a family bonding weekend at one of the most expensive hotels in the city. She picked it, she organized it, and she made sure everybody knew how exclusive it was. The kind of place where the floors are so shiny you feel guilty stepping on them. The kind of place where the staff speak in soft voices and call you sir or ma'am like you're royalty. When she sent the invite, she added, "We can all split the cost. It'll be worth it." And my parents, of course, instantly said yes. I stayed quiet. Not because I couldn't afford it, but because I knew exactly what she was doing. She wanted control. She wanted to show off. And she wanted to see me sweat. When I finally texted back and said, "Sure, I'll be there," she immediately replied, "If it's too expensive, we can find something cheaper for you." I sat there staring at the screen, feeling that old sting of humiliation rising again. I replied, "I'm fine." She sent a thumbs up emoji like she didn't believe me. The day arrived. I walked into the hotel with my overnight bag, wearing simple clothes, nothing flashy. The lobby smelled like vanilla and money. I saw my sister already at the check-in desk, hair perfectly styled, heels clicking on the marble. My parents were hovering beside her like nervous satellites. The moment she saw me, that familiar smirk crawled across her face. She looked me up and down, slowly. "You made it," she said, like she was surprised I hadn't gotten lost on the way. Before I could reply, she turned to the receptionist and laughed. "This is my sister. She's visiting. We're all paying together." The receptionist smiled politely, but I felt the burn in my chest. Then my sister leaned closer to me and whispered, loudly enough for our parents to hear, "Are you sure you can even afford this place?" The words sliced straight through me. My parents chuckled awkwardly like it was a harmless joke. I felt my throat tighten. Years of belittling, years of assumptions, years of being treated like the struggling one, the charity case. And I might have stayed silent like I always did if the universe hadn't chosen that exact moment to intervene. From behind the counter, a familiar face appeared. The hotel manager. He looked at me, smiled genuinely, and said, "Welcome back. It's good to see you again." My sister's smirk froze. My parents blinked. And I just stood there, because yes, I had been there before. Several times, for conferences, client meetings, private events, always quietly, never telling them. My sister turned to me slowly and said, "Wait, what?" I took a breath. For once I didn't shrink, I spoke. "Actually, I booked my own suite, separate from yours." Silence, thick, heavy, almost hilarious. The manager asked if I wanted to check in first. My sister stuttered, "But we're splitting." And that's when I calmly handed over my card. Not debit, credit, business class. The kind she didn't even know I had. The manager said, "As usual, we've upgraded you. Corner suite." My sister's eyes widened like she'd swallowed a lemon whole. My mom muttered, "Upgrade?" My dad looked confused and a tiny bit proud. I thanked the manager, took my key, and turned back to my sister. And I swear something inside me shifted. I wasn't angry. I wasn't trying to show off. I was just done being small. I said, "You don't have to worry about what I can or can't afford anymore." She went quiet. Really quiet. And for the first time in years, she didn't have a snappy comeback. But let me back up and explain how all of this built up to that moment. Because it didn't start at the hotel. It started long before, with patterns so deeply ingrained that I didn't even see them as toxic until recently. Growing up, money was always the measuring stick. Who bought what? Who vacationed where? Who drove which car? My sister fed off that environment. Every conversation was a competition. When I struggled, she rolled her eyes. When I finally achieved something, she minimized it. "Oh, that's cute," she'd say. "Maybe someday you'll have a real job." I remember one Thanksgiving when she mocked my worn-out shoes at the dinner table. Everyone laughed. I laughed too, pretending I didn't care, while my insides crumbled. I worked jobs that required passion, writing, design, consulting, things that weren't easily understood by my parents' generation. They thought stability only looked one way. Clock in, clock out, paycheck, slow promotions. My way looked unstable to them, so they assumed failure. But behind closed doors, I was building, learning, networking. I had months where I barely scraped by, but I also had breakthroughs, big ones. I just never shared them, because every conversation with my family turned into a debate, a lecture, or a comparison to my sister. The only people who knew the truth about my success were my closest friends and my clients, and honestly, keeping it private felt peaceful until that hotel trip, because that weekend forced everything out into the open. After I checked in, I went up to my suite. Floor-to-ceiling windows, city skyline glowing like a galaxy. I sat on the bed and exhaled, shaking from adrenaline. My phone buzzed. It was my sister. "Why didn't you tell us you've been staying here?" No apology, no humility, just confusion mixed with entitlement. I ignored it at first. Later that night, we all met downstairs for dinner at one of those restaurants where the menus don't have prices printed on them. My sister dominated the conversation, as usual, until my dad casually asked, "So, how long have you been able to afford places like this?" His tone wasn't judgmental. It was curious, maybe even a little impressed. I swallowed and told them the truth. About the business, the clients, the travel, the growth, not bragging, just explaining. My sister's face hardened more with every sentence. Finally, she snapped, "So you've just been hiding all of this? From your own family?" I said, "No. I just stopped trying to prove myself to people who already decided I was a failure." You could have heard a pin drop. And honestly, saying those words out loud felt like tearing open a window in a room that had been suffocating for years. Now here's where I need your opinion, because this is the point everything truly shifted. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have softened things to avoid conflict? Or would you have finally spoken your truth, even if it broke the peace? Because I didn't choose peace. I chose honesty. After dinner, my sister cornered me in the hallway. Her voice was low, tight, almost shaking. "You embarrassed me," she said. I blinked. "How?" She said, "You made me look stupid." I asked if you could afford it because I assumed... Exactly, I interrupted. "You assumed. You always assume I'm beneath you. And I'm tired." She opened her mouth and closed it again. Then she said something I'll never forget. "Well, at least now I know. You're not a burden." A burden, like that was what I'd been to her all these years in her mind. That word hit hard, not because it was true, but because she believed it. I looked at her and said, "I was never your burden. You just liked thinking you were ahead." She stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. And then, instead of apologizing, she stormed off. The rest of the weekend was awkward. My parents treated me differently, softer, more respectful, but my sister barely spoke to me. When we checked out, the manager shook my hand and said, "See you next time." My sister didn't even look at me. Weeks passed. She barely texted. When she did, it was clipped, distant. Then finally, she sent one long message. She admitted she'd always felt pressured to win. She admitted my success threatened her ego. She didn't exactly apologize, but she acknowledged that she'd been cruel. And I realized then, this wasn't just about money. It was about identity, hierarchy, control. We had both been shaped by a family that measured worth in numbers, not character. But unlike her, I had escaped that mindset. The aftermath is complicated. We're still rebuilding. We talk. But things are different now. She doesn't make snide comments anymore. She doesn't assume. And I don't shrink. I set boundaries. I speak up. I learned something huge through all this. Sometimes the only way to change a family dynamic is to stop playing the role they assigned you, even if it shocks them, even if it hurts, even if they call you selfish, dramatic, or ungrateful. You deserve to stand where you belong, not where other people think you should stand. If you're the underestimated one in your family, trust me, I know how exhausting it is. But your worth isn't determined by who believes in you. It's determined by what you build, what you learn, and who you become when no one is clapping. And sometimes, when the truth finally comes out, you'll see people differently, not as villains, but as deeply insecure humans fighting their own invisible battles. Still, their insecurity doesn't get to define you. Thank you for listening to my story. If you were on my side at any point in this entire mess, like this video because it helps more than you realize. Subscribe for more stories like this. I have plenty. And tell me in the comments what you think. Was I wrong for staying silent all those years? Or was it the right moment to finally speak up? I'm really curious to hear your thoughts. I'll see you all in the next story.